Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Nicola Donnelly, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Sergeant Jack Johnson. Today is Vietnam Veterans Day, originally known as Long Tan Day. The 18th of August commemorated the Battle of Long Tan, which took place that day in 1966. Over time, it was adopted by Vietnam veterans as a special day of remembrance for all Australians who served and died during our 10-year involvement in the war. Some 60,000 Australians served in the Vietnam War between 1962 and 1972, of whom 523 died and almost 2,400 were wounded. But many of those who returned home carried their physical wounds. Some also suffered lingering illnesses, while others carried the mental scars of war. Most faced a lengthy battle after the war against these legacies of Vietnam. Their families endured those hard times alongside them. Late in the war, public attitudes had largely turned against Australia's involvement in Vietnam. As a result, some of our Vietnam veterans also felt poorly treated by their fellow Australians upon returning home, and that their service was not properly honoured. In time, this was acknowledged and redress began, with the October 1987 Welcome Home Parade in Sydney. This was followed by the dedication of the Australian Vietnam Forces National Memorial on Anzac Parade in 1992. After the Welcome Home Parade, this day, the 18th of August, officially became known as Vietnam Veterans Day. So today, we remember all our Vietnam veterans of all three services: Army, Air Force, and Navy. We give thanks and pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour, and to the survivors who came home. We are especially honoured to acknowledge the veterans of the Vietnam War and their families and association members who are joining us this evening. We thank you all for your service. We are also honoured to acknowledge Mr. Glenn Keys, Member of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, and warmly welcome Group Captain Alan George, retired, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you are able, please stand in joining singing the national anthem.
Catapult party, 8-10! Jump! Catapult party, present! Out!
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Catapult party, shoulder! Out! Catapult party, order! Out!
If you require a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Reeds or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Jack Jewry. Jack Jewry was born on the 28th of March, 1945 in London. The family immigrated to Australia when Jack was a young boy and settled in the Sydney suburb of St. Mary's. His sister Rita recalled that he was a happy boy full of life. He attended school locally, including St. Mary's High School. Jack was a well-known swimmer, representing his school at the local St. Mary's Amateur Swimming Club. He won the Western District Schoolboys Swimming Championship and later became a swimming coach. Aged 14, he met the love of his life, Suzanne May, who was a year younger. They were soon inseparable and became engaged when Jack was 19. After gaining his intermediate certificate, Jack left school and went to work as a clerk in the construction industry. In 1965, Jack Jewry was among the first national servicemen to receive his call-up papers for service with the Army. He entered the 1st Recruit Training Battalion at Kapooka on the 30th of June, 1965. He took to soldiering well, and after completing his training, he was posted to the recently raised 6th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, becoming a member of D Company. The battalion was preparing to deploy to South Vietnam, and the men undertook training exercises in Canberra and Shellwater Bay. On the 14th of May, Jack and Suzanne were married at St. Mary Magdalene Church in St. Mary's. They set out on a honeymoon, but with 6 hours deployment looming, he returned to duty early. It is impossible to say if Jack had any premonition of his fate, but before departing Sydney, he gave his closest friend a cassette tape for safekeeping. 6RR was flown by companies from Amberley, Queensland, to South Vietnam. D Company was taken on the second lift early on the 9th of June. On arrival in Saigon, the men were transported to Vung Tau, then to Nui Dat, to help establish the 1st Australian Task Force's base. Jack and his comrades spent much of their time digging in and preparing defences. Shortly after arriving in Nui Dat, 6RR deployed on a search and clearance operation in a nearby village, followed by a 5-day search and destroy operation, during which 6RR first came into contact with the local Viet Cong's D445 Provincial Mobile Battalion. On the 20th of June, Jack was promoted to Lance Corporal and joined Corporal Buddy Lee's section in 10 Platoon. Suzanne wrote to Jack every night, spraying perfume on the letter, which became a source of good-natured teasing from his mates. Jack, too, rode home as often as he could. In the early hours of the 17th of August, Nui Dat was hit by mortar and recoilless rifle fire, which caused 24 Australian casualties. Company-sized patrols were sent out and soon located the enemy firing positions, but the Viet Cong had withdrawn. At midday on the 18th of August, D Company 6RR moved into the Long Tan area. Shortly after 3 p.m, the company had a contact with a small enemy group in the Long Tan rubber plantation. 11 Platoon followed the enemy and came under heavy fire around 4 p.m, taking immediate casualties. Monsoonal rain quickly set in, reducing visibility to 50 metres and turning the ground into slick, red mud. Sent to assist 11 Platoon, 10 Platoon became pinned down and after suffering several casualties, was withdrawn to D Company headquarters perimeter. In the hours that followed, a numerically superior Vietnamese force attempted to overrun D Company. Artillery support, which was well controlled by forward artillery observers, was crucial in breaking up numerous enemy attacks. 11 and 12 platoons rejoined the rest of the company and formed a cohesive perimeter. Around this time, Corporal Buddy Lee ran under heavy fire to bring in a wounded member of 12 Platoon, but was wounded on the way back. Lee and the other wounded soldier made it back to the Australian position. Seeing Lee had been wounded, Jack Jewry made his way to his section commander, As he began to apply a bandage, he was shot and killed instantly, his body falling over Lee's back. D Company held on, receiving a desperately needed resupply of ammunition dropped to them by 2 Australian helicopters. The battle ended as night fell, when a relief column of 7 armoured personnel carriers from 3 Troop, 1 armoured personnel carrier squadron, arrived with A Company 6 RAR on board, in the process scattering an enemy unit that had been preparing to attack. After the APCs linked up with D Company, the enemy withdrew. The battered D Company survivors returned to the battlefield the following morning. They recovered 2 wounded comrades who had accidentally been left behind, and the members of 11 Platoon who had been killed. The dead were still found lying at their weapons as if defending their position. It was a chilling sight for those who witnessed it. Jack's remains were returned to Australia on the 2nd of September. He was accorded a funeral with full military honours. The funeral cortege drove through St Mary's and past Jack's former high school. His ashes were later interred in Pine Grove Cemetery at Eastern Creek. He was 21 years old. Suzanne received Jack's cassette tape, which contained his last message to her. Suzanne was pregnant, but miscarried because of her overwhelming grief. Jack Jewry's name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left, along with more than 500 others from the Vietnam War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of courage and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Jack Jewry and all of those Australians who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Catapult party, shoulder,
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
catapult party, present, catapult party, shoulder,
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the Last Post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.